When checking pens, it's important when you first walk up to a new pen to have a look in first before you enter the pen, and therefore change the behaviour of the cattle to find any that are off on their own, because these are often sick animals who have moved away or haven't kept with the rest of the mob as the rest of the mob has moved. When you then enter the pen, we take a zigzag track through the body of the cattle to ensure that we get them all up if they're lying down, and to get a good inspection of every single animal in the pen. Also, while we're doing our pen check, we check the feed trough for old feed, contamination, and availability of feed, and we also check water troughs for cleanliness, and we always keep a lookout for faecal consistency to make sure we don't have clinical signs of lactic acidosis in the form of bubbly scours in the pen. To ensure we're finding cattle early in the disease course of bovine respiratory disease, we must be really alert to detecting the subtle signs of lethargy and depression. In some cases, we will actually pull and treat an animal for early BRD with nothing more than the signs of lethargy and depression. Now, at that stage, they may or may not have a nasal discharge, but unless we get them early, our resolution rate tends to decrease quite rapidly. Now, this animal actually has a few signs, and he has sunken eyes indicative of dehydration, has a low head carriage when he's left to his own resources, a substantial nasal discharge and a slight increase in respiratory rate. But the most striking thing, and the signs that we initially identified the animal on, is simply that depression and lethargy. And when you go to move him, if we do it in a quiet way, and that's why it's another reason why it's so important to handle cattle quietly when we're checking pens, he will show that he's not full of enthusiasm and energy, perhaps drag his feet and look quite depressed. The sick cattle have been identified and quietly removed from the pen and moved to the hospital system. It's important that they be immediately treated according to the treatment protocol established by the feedlot veterinarian. There should be no deviations from the established protocol, and if anybody treating the cattle has queries about an unusual case, they should refer, of course, to the veterinarian. The cattle are treated based on body weight, which is measured over the scales in the crush as they're treated, and the records are maintained of treatment, date, animal ID, and date of expiry of any withholding periods or export slaughter intervals. They're then moved quietly either to recovery pens, or those that are capable of going back and feeding and drinking for themselves can be returned to pen as soon as possible. To ensure the effectiveness of the drugs that we're using, and also to ensure that we don't cause any injection site reactions or abscesses, it's also essential that with disposable syringes and needles they be changed after every animal, or where we're using reusable syringes and needles should be changed after every 15 head, and they must be kept sterilised and sharp. The cattle being weighed behind me are having the transponders in their ears scanned as they enter the scales, and that means that they're automatically identified and the weight is logged against that identification in the computer system, and it allows us to track performance on an ongoing basis at the feedlot. Not only that, having those transponders in place for electronic identification allows the performance of the cattle to be tracked right back from the property of origin through the feedlot and even to the abattoir, and in terms of carcass characteristics and meat quality.